Okay, continuing with our responses to the 12 insane things that we Mormons believe. I believe this is number 11, finally getting towards the end, the final stretch. But the last, 4 have been, well, I'll even admit some of them had some truth to them, but they were definitely trying to spin it in the worst way they possibly could without giving a full understanding of the doctrine, which is what these videos are intended to do. They're not actually intended to give you a true, full understanding of what the church teaches, just the sensationalized, superficial, the superficial sensational stuff to make the church as bad as possible, or look as bad as possible. But let us get into number 11 here.
The number 11 thing that Mormons believe is that God lives in a planet in the universe, and that planet is called Kolob. And they actually took the hymn Come Thou Fount and added an extra verse, which I'm kind of mad about that because Come Thou Fount is my favorite hymn. We play it on the beginning of all of our live streams. They actually added a verse to that hymn, and it says, if you could hie to Kolob. What in the world? This is like Star Trek religion, man. This is weird stuff, but this is Mormonism. They believe that God lives across the universe on a planet called Kolob. May as well be a Klingon or part of the Borg or something like that. Whatever. That's what they believe.
So, here we have a very common criticism of the church, you could say, that is almost never understood by anybody outside the church. It's actually kind of misunderstood by many people in the church. So let's clear up a few things. First of all, Kolob. Yes, we believe in Kolob, but it is not a planet, nor is it where God lives. Now, Kolob itself is taken from the Book of Abraham, which was a translation of Egyptian papyrus scrolls that Joseph Smith had received back in Kirtland in the 1830s. And from these papyrus, he translated a short portion of a record kept of Abraham. In the 3rd chapter of the Book of Abraham, God shows Abraham a vision of all the stars and planets that God has created. Starting in verse 2, and I saw the stars, that they were very great, and that one of them was nearest unto the throne of God, and there were many great ones which were near unto it. And the Lord said unto me, these are the governing ones, and the name of the great one is Kolob, because it is near unto me. For I am the Lord thy God. I have set this one to govern all those which belong to the same order as that upon which thou standest. Kolob's not a planet. It is a star or a governing body, a governing light that governs all planets that exist in a mortal state. Now, there are a few other things about it, but let's look down here. Kolob is the great governing body, but we also have this. I love this. See, God is giving Abraham here a astrology lesson. He's teaching him about the stars. And this is what he says. And he said unto me, this is Sheneha, which is the sun. And he said unto me, Kokab, which is star. And he said unto me, Olea, which is the moon. And he said unto me, Kokwabim, which signifies stars, or all the great lights which were in the firmament of heaven. So Kokab is one star. Kokwabim is plurality of stars, is all the stars, all the lights of heaven. And then he continues, if two things exist, and there be one above the other, there shall be greater things above them. Therefore, Kolob is the greatest of all the Kokwabim that thou hast seen, because it is nearest unto me. Let that sink in a minute. This is not a planet. This is a great star. It is not where God lives, but it is the thing in mortality, in the universe that we know of, that is closest to where God lives. And because of this, because it is so close to God, we also read up here in verse 4, and the Lord said unto me by the Urim and Thummim that Kolob was after the manner of the Lord, according to its times and seasons in the revolutions thereof. That one revolution was a day unto the Lord after his manner of reckoning, it being 1,000 years, according to the time appointed unto that whereon thou standest. This is the reckoning of the Lord's time, according to the reckoning of Kolob. Kolob is a star closest to God. It is the grand governing power that God has set in the universe that powers everything else. And he says this also in verse 9. And thus there shall be the reckoning of the time of one planet above another, until thou come nigh unto Kolob, which Kolob is after the reckoning of the Lord's time, which Kolob is set nigh unto the throne of God, to govern all those planets which belong to the same order as that upon which thou standest. Again, it is a governing body. Now, in Abraham, we also have these three facsimiles. This is facsimile number 2. And this is the explanation of these symbols that is given. Symbol 1 in the center. Figure 1, Kolob, signifying the first creation, nearest to the celestial or the residence of God. First in government, the last pertaining to the measurement of time. Let's also look at figure 5, just below figure 1. It says here, it is said by the Egyptians to be the sun, and to borrow its light from Kolob through the medium of Ke Evenresh, which is the governing key, the grand key, or in other words, the governing power. In other words, Kolob is the star through which God governs the universe. You might compare Kolob to the first day of creation when God said, "Let there be light," before he created the sun, because he created the sun and the moon on the 4th day. But on the first day, he said, "Let there be light." And from that light started the rest of creation. Kolob, the first creation, the star that is closest to God. Not where God lives, but that is closest to God. In all the expanse of the universe, Kolob is the closest to God. So no, it is not a planet, nor is it where God lives. Let us understand. Now, a lot of people will still laugh and mock like he does in the last half of his little clip here. But what do the rest of the religious world understand about God and his creation and his power? The universe that he has formed. At the end, it's just, oh, great are the mysteries of God. Yes, great are the mysteries of God. And I read this. I read chapter 3 of Abraham, or the entire book of Abraham, really, but the chapter 3 in particular. And this is, it's just fantastic. Not only that God would not only reveal this to Abraham, but that Abraham recorded it so that we could see it, so that we could have this knowledge, that we could understand. Not in full, we can never really understand the creation and how God works because we're not gods. We have not experienced that, but we can look at it and see the result. And that's what this is. This is saying, look at the universe not as a intellectual scientist who just studies it, but look at it as a creation of God in all of its magnificence. And I love the words. These words, I believe, are from the original language of Adam, which would have been the language of God himself. Not Hebrew, not Aramaic, not English, but these words are taken from the language of God. Kokab is a star. Kokwabim pluralizes all the grand bodies of the universe. The greatest of the Kokwabim being Kolob, for it was the first and the closest to God. This is beautiful. But I do have to talk about one last thing, now that we've gotten clear on what Kolob is. He also makes the claim that the hymn, "If You Could Hie to Kolob," is simply an extra verse added on to the end of the hymn of Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Now, this was a new one on me. I've never heard this claim before. And anybody who actually looks at these two hymns would know that's a pile of crap. Pardon my language, but it is. Anybody who understands poetry in any way knows that these things are completely unrelated. For just a few things, like Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing has 3 verses, each 8 lines. Okay. If You Could Hide a Kolob is not a 4th verse added to this, it has its own 5 verses. So if it's going to be an addition to Come Thou Fount, it has to be 5 verses added on, not 1. It's an entirely different poem, but a few other notes you can see here. If You Could Hide a Kolob is written in basic iambic meter. Unstressed, followed by stressed, then unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. Now, you do have an uneven syllables. You have 7 syllables, then 6, then 7, then 6. And that's the pattern. But it's a basic iambic meter. On the other hand, Come Thou Fount is a much more complex and uncommon meter known as the secundus paeon. Iambic meter is based in a 2-syllable count. Secundus paeon is a 4-syllable count. Each poetic foot, instead of being unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, its foot is actually is stressed, unstressed, stressed, stressed. 4 syllables to a foot. But it's also, it's got 8 syllables, then 6. Because it is based on a 4-syllable meter. 8, then 7. 8, then 7. But a very different meter. Very uncommon meter, very rare meter, and a very difficult meter to write. If they were just trying to add a verse onto the end, they did a horrible job. For one thing, the poems don't match. They're the wrong meter, wrong syllable count. And then the one song is 5 verses long, and the other's 3 verses long. And quite honestly, I'm a little bit worked up. He says, "Oh, that makes me upset because Come Thou Fount is is my favorite hymn." Honestly, Come Thou Fount is a beautiful hymn. It's one of my favorites. But so is Hide a Kolob, and for him to twist the two together and make this claim, he wants to get mad at the idea that we added a verse to his favorite hymn. Well, I'm getting mad. I'm a little upset at the idea that he would make the claim in the first place. But I'm going to leave it here. So that's going to be the end of the video. Just to review, Kolob is not where God lives, nor is it a planet. It is a star. It is one of the Kokobim, or the grand lights of heaven, the grand stars. It is the greatest of those stars because it is the closest to where God lives, and it is the first creation. But it is not where God lives, nor is it a planet. So we'll leave it here. If you enjoy it, like, subscribe, tune in for the next video.